Today we're going to see how bad my taste buds are because we're going to be working on a blind tasting of three Cabernet Sauvignons, all from the United States and all under $20. Two are from Washington and one is from California, specifically Paso Robles. So give me a second while I get these samples broken out and we can go on and see if there's really any difference between these three different wines. So now we have our three samples. Each are of about ounce and a half, 2 ounces maybe, just depending on I didn't actually weigh them or anything, but they're very similar in quantity. Let's go ahead and take a look at sample one. So it's definitely quite dark, and these all are in the same color range, a darkish, mediumish ruby, which is characteristic of Cabernet Sauvignon. On the nose, there's a lot of vanilla, dark cherry, cassis. There's also a little bit of alcohol on this sample of wine number one. So there's quite a bit of acidity in this wine, but there's not much beyond the acidity. There's a little bit of fruit. You could call it a tad bit jammy, as what people usually call American Cabernet Sauvignons. But there's not a whole lot of complexity. These are all chilled. They're all chilled at around 55, 60 degrees Fahrenheit. But there's not a ton of complexity in this specific wine. And it feels a little sweet to my palate. It's certainly not my favorite. Let's move on to wine number two. This one is quite a bit darker. It features much less lightness around the borders. It's very dark in terms of the borders, very dark interior. And overall, it's just looking a little bit darker. On the nose, there's not nearly as much sense of smell coming in here. On this one, I can feel some vanilla, some fruit. This one, there's not a whole lot going on. That's kind of unfortunate. Maybe I'm getting a little bit of fruit now, but it seems just a lot more muted overall compared to the first wine. Okay, so the length on this wine is much longer compared to the first wine. It's not nearly as acidic. It does feel a touch sweeter. It does feature a lot of those jammy fruit flavors you would expect of American Cabernet Sauvignon. It's definitely got the vanilla there. There's not tons of complexity. The first wine had a little bit more tannins, and the tannins were in a way kind of chalky. This one is not feeling very tanninic at all. There's not much bitterness. And it just feels very simple, even simpler compared to the very first wine because of those missing tannins. It feels almost like a fruit juice in some ways. I would compare it to some fruit juices. There's just not a whole lot of structure there, unfortunately. Let me look at wine number three. And right off the bat, this one is very similar in the darkness to wine number two, but still not as dark. Still lighter I'm sorry, no. Wine number one is not nearly as dark as this one, and these two are very comparable. If that makes sense at all. Uh, okay, on the nose, I'm getting now tobacco, earth, um, of course, some fruit, but this is a very different profile than these first two. Possibly a little bit more mature. And in the glass, it looks honestly a little bit mature. It looks more silky in the glass. And given the legs on this and the other two, I could indicate that this is possibly a little bit higher alcohol level. There's a really strong note of cassis, much more than the other ones. Well, that's actually by far the worst. So I was completely wrong. This one is even sweeter than this one, which is sweeter than this one. It's just kind of flabby. There's just nothing there. It's kind of similar to the fruit juice that I was saying earlier. This is going to be tough. I chose a really tough competition here for me. So let me see out of these three. Let's do some competitive tastings to see if, we do have, because I'm having a hard time. These two by far feature the lowest level of acidity. This has a nicer level of acidity. It's thicker. This one feels a little bit thinner. Yeah. All in all, believe it or not, I'm going to have to go with one here. I'm going to actually say that these have been placed in the right order. It was not me. It was a blind placing by my wife. But yeah, one is the best wine here. I would still only give it an 85, 86 points. Maybe 87. But no, it doesn't deserve that. This I would give it an 84, an 83. And this I would give it an 80. And I think I'm being generous. Generally speaking, wine number one is by far the best. So let's take a look. Worst to best. So 3, 2, and 1. This is 2, sorry. So that's 2. 3 is actually going to be our H3 Cabernet Sauvignon. So this is Columbia Crest out of Washington State. It is actually the cheapest wine. Cost about $8. It's actually the only one that has actually a calorie count on there. This is not very good. There is almost no complexity in this wine. I would not recommend it even for $8. I think you can find wines with much more complexity and are far more interesting than that Cabernet Sauvignon. Okay, so number 2 is actually the most expensive wine. This is the J. Lore Seven Oaks Cabernet Sauvignon, which is the Paso Robles wine. And it's funny because I've been told there's a lot of oak in this specific wine, but it just doesn't have much acidity. There's a lot of additional sweetness, in my opinion. Shouldn't really be there for a serious wine, so I would not recommend that either. And so the last one is the winner, and it is actually the one that I was told would probably win from Charles Smith in Washington. It is their Substance Cabernet Sauvignon. And yeah, it's not a perfect Cabernet Sauvignon by any level. It's actually quite a touch lighter than the other two in terms of color, but it has more acidity. Not nearly as much complexity, but there is a present tannin level, which these other two do not have. And in my opinion, it's the wine I would drink if I was forced to choose one of these three. Yeah, it's really, well, I guess maybe it's not interesting that came out. Oh, I expected this to win out of the three wines because I've heard decent things about this, and obviously it's this. I didn't reveal the price. This is a $10 bottle, so we're talking about $8, $10, and $12, and then at a discount store at an actual retail price. I've heard that this one goes up to $20. I'm not 100% sure what this one goes, and this one also will go at some times for $12, just depending on the store you go to. But yeah, overall winner. What do you think? Is this the wrong winner? Did I choose the wrong wines to try? I like to try to keep it down low and not try too many wines at the same time because who knows what can happen. If you have a lot of different wines you're trying, you can run into different issues. But this was a fun experiment, and I think we should try more low-end Cabernet Sauvignons and some higher-end Cabernet Sauvignons. Stay tuned. What we have coming up next is not actually red wines, but actually we're going to be looking at some white wines. And it's going to be a fun experiment because we're going to be looking at production of the same grape across several different countries. And we want to see, what are the different characteristics of said grape, which is Chenin Blanc, in the United States, in France, and in South Africa. So stay tuned for that.